our guest lecturer to provide about 5 questions that we'll put on into your final exam.
Ooh.
So the content will come solely from the lectures. Obviously, there's no chapter to this. About our guest lecturer, his name's Gavin Rogers. He was in our master's program up until this past spring, so he graduated with a master's degree. He has had and continues to have a career in military intelligence. And the current plan is he will continue that for about the next 2 years and then apply to some doctoral programs.
Oh.
So
Everything he says, oh.
Like, I will not get that high.
Yeah.
a lot of comment here.
I thought about a master's.
I'm stopping at a bachelor's.
Gavin is the most knowledgeable student I've ever had, and that comes back over 12 years of experience with his knowledge of dietary supplements. So mechanisms, what they're purported to do, what they actually do, if it's males versus females, dosages. He's kind of like a walking encyclopedia of information.
Is
Oh,
this
yeah?
exact PowerPoint going to be put up on Canvas?
It's on Canvas,
Okay.
yes. It's
Yes,
in the
yes,
exam
sure.
3 exam 3 content, yeah.
Okay.
Both of his lectures are there. So this lecture will not take the entire time, so he'll give it. We'll have time for questions and discussion, and then we'll break. So any questions for me before I ask him to start his lecture? All right, it's your show. And I don't have a clicker, so.
I got one actually. It's already set up too.
Oh, good.
Most prepared.
Just for clarification though, you 5, the back of your head is okay. I don't
Every
want to
dick
intrude.
and
All right, thank you.
Anybody need a brush? You know what they There to be using It's a
This, if I think I recall correctly, I think the class is all done for the lights. Can you click, if you don't mind, Dr. Kimball? Yeah, is that, ooh, well, this is ambient lights.
Is that what you want?
I would,
I like this.
all right, I would prefer this if it's okay with you, Doctor.
I'm gonna need y'all to
It's
stop
you get to determine.
All right, I'm gonna go with this. Try not to fall asleep. All right. So, thank you, very, very kind introduction, by the way, Dr. Campbell. He just set an Olympic level bar for me, so I gotta meet that one. So supplements. Who here takes a supplement? That could be, it's a myriad of different things, basically vitamin, even multivitamin would be considered a supplement. But supplements are pretty ubiquitous in the world, but there's some mystery behind them. People don't really know exactly first off, what a supplement is. Second off, in our field, in the exercise science. This is all exercise science undergrad, right?
Yes.
This
Yep.
is nursing.
Nursing.
I just
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Gotta go.
Well, it's all still collectively together. Supplements are pretty well known amongst the population. I'm going to help cover some within the exercise science field. So today, actually, we're covering strength and lean body mass in particular. Wednesday, we're going to be covering endurance-oriented supplements. So to start things off, welcome to the jungle. Classic song, welcome to the jungle. I'm sure that probably all came on everyone's face. So it goes without saying, my man here, Dr. Oz, there's a vast array of supplements that are available to the public. Dun, dun, dun. But what's the reality? If you notice the pie chart here between what works and what does not work, you can see there's a rather large section of what does not work, and what does work within the supplements is actually pretty small. Of course, this isn't exactly a percentage based on all the supplements. I don't even know a tangible way that you could figure that out. But just goes to show you that what works proportionate to what doesn't work, you can find out that there's really only so much that actually works once you sift through all the crap out there, for lack of a better term. So what should we consider when we're talking about supplements? What actually has some evidence behind it? Is it a worthwhile supplement to take? Is it safe? What's the cost of the supplement? And that's something you definitely should consider. Is it something that you can feasibly keep going with your lifestyle and everything that you have, your income and all the different demands of your life? What are your goals? And if you're a coach out there, what are your athletes' goals? What are things that you should consider? Is a supplement even in the ballpark of something that you would need for that sport, so on and so forth. And then secondary or tertiary effects downstream, such as habituation with the supplements, such as if there's going to be interactions that you should know, and that goes back to safety as well. So the basics, what kind of effects are supplements within the exercise science field going to have? This is just a synopsis of the predominant effects you can see. There's fatigue reduction, increases and decreases in ATP availability, O2 requirements, and vasodilation. Let you just scan through that list. But ultimately, it boils down to body composition. It's going to augment or change this, manipulate body composition in one way, or performance is going to be altered by the supplement. So what is a dietary supplement? Well, it's a product that's taken orally that contains one or more ingredients, such as vitamins, as I mentioned, a multivitamin would count as one, or amino acids, individual amino acids, such as glycine, so on and so forth, that are intended to supplement one's diet. Keyword there, supplement one's diet, and are not considered food. That's the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of it. In conclusion, they're meant to be an addition, so they're a supplement to your diet, supplement to the natural things that you would ingest. And it would otherwise be hard for you to obtain through diet, such as creatine down here that I have. Creatine monohydrate, 5 grams, just a regular teaspoon of supplementation of creatine is equivalent to about a kilogram of red meat, so 2.2 pounds. It's quite a lot. Not to mention if you're trying to remain in a caloric deficit, things need to be considered there as well, whether you can feasibly count for these in your diet and still be in a deficit or meet your goals for protein. So today, as I mentioned, we're covering strength and lean mass in particular, and Wednesday will be endurance-oriented supplements. So what's the aim of these lectures between today and Wednesday? Well, to help you, now that you are a student in an undergraduate exercise science program, you are going to have a collegiate level education. So therefore, whether you like it or not, you're going to be seen as an expert, you're going to be seen as a professional, you're going to be seen as an educator. So you yourself need to be informed in what kind of is out there to help you delineate between what's worthwhile, what's not worthwhile, and to help you be the harbinger of good information rather than the people, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but those of you that like Dr. Oz, people like Dr. Oz that are out there just selling snake oil supplements and things that are not very efficacious. I'm going to be sticking to only legal supplements, of course. All right. Okay. So when we're talking about strength and lean mass, there is some overlap between what we'll cover in endurance, different mechanisms, and so on and so forth. But in particular, here's technically what is out there. If you were just to do a generic search of things that would augment your strength or lean mass, it's quite an immense list. Some of these names you might not have ever seen in your life. Some of them are probably rather familiar to you. But here's what we'll cover today. So that was the list. I see you peeking back there. I'm glad you guys, no one's asleep yet, so kudos to you all. And then what we're covering today. So let's begin. Creatine. Who's heard of creatine? Who thinks it is a steroid? Nice, good answer. All right, that's a common thing. People think it is within a steroidal family or a type of steroid. Indeed, it is not. It is actually something that you yourself have in your body, and if we're talking amounts, the average 70-kilogram individual has about 120 grams of creatine stored within their body. And through different mechanisms that we're not really going to cover, your natural physiologic functions, in particular methylation, you use 2 to 3 grams of that a day, and you have to resynthesize that to recreate that homeostatic level of creatine within your body. It's one of the most well-researched and evidence-backed supplements that's out there, especially within the exercise science field. But now you're seeing a lot of evidence coming out for it for brain health and for depressive symptoms, anxiolytic symptoms, so many other things. It's because creatine is involved in so many different functions that people are unfamiliar with. So unknown by many, creatine is actually directly involved in cells that support vision, hearing, cognition, digestion, and digestive health, and even allows for sperm's movement. So the energy that sperm needs to travel up the vaginal canal is actually creatine that supplies that. So in a way, you're all here because of creatine. That's something that probably not many of you would even fathom. But creatine, it's the fastest traveling energy system that we have, the creatine kinase reaction. So basically how the cells in our ears and our eyes work is they're very long cells, and it needs super quick energy to transmit the information from one side of the cell to the other long. It's like a muscle fiber in a way. And the creatine provides it with that energy so that we can do or maintain our regular functions, but to transmit that energy, it uses creatine. So basically, like the hairs in our ears, the cells in our ears, uses creatine to transmit that information to our brain and allow us to hear things, and same with vision and so on and so forth. Digestion, so creatine actually allows the energy to pump hydrochloric acid into our stomach, and it helps through methylation, the creation of stomach acid. But of particular relevance, however, creatine has been shown to significantly improve power output and lean mass improvements in individuals, both male and female. So know this, have you guys covered creatine?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you covered the creatine kinase reaction, that should probably look familiar with you. I think that was up there when I made the slide. I don't know how I got there, but it's easier when you see them all just a straight line. I was going back over these, I didn't actually put creatine kinase as the enzyme that allows for that reaction to occur, but you should all know this. Basically, ADP, adenosine diphosphate, plus phosphocreatine, which is creatine, basic creatine with an extra phosphate group added to it. Basically, through creatine kinase, allows the creation of ATP, and then phosphocreatine broken down into creatine. But ultimately, supplementation with creatine provides saturation of creatine stores within the body. This allows a slight buffer or increase in the amount of time before fatigue actually sets in, because it's such a quick energy system. So how does it support performance? Power output is increased, but how does this actually happen? There was a picture here. Hopefully on the slides, you guys have it. So we got my man actin and my man myosin. You guys have heard actin and myosin, right? The cross-bridge reaction sliding filament theory. So ultimately, it's just basically like a straight line here. You have actin on one side, myosin. Then they're the contractile proteins, and basically, it's not necessarily covered too much in exercise science, but there is ions within the muscle cell. So ions being sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride, and magnesium, also known as electrolytes to most of you all. You've heard of them before as electrolytes. Well, inside a muscle cell are these ions. And what is going to happen is you have myosin and actin, you have the sliding filament theory going on, and it's actually a cycling between positive and negatively charged proteins, and that's repetitively happening between the myosin and actin grabbing onto each other. It's a combination between positive and negative charge that really matters, and that's where that comes into play is a concept called ionic strength. So the more concentrated ions are with each other, the higher the ionic strength is. That's not a good thing when it comes to muscle contraction. That means there's more ions concentrated in one small location, and that's going to cause disruption to happen because they're competing with each other for these positive and negative charges. So what creatine does, I'm sure you've all heard of the concept that creatine causes water storage or causes bloating or so on and so forth. But what it's actually doing is causing an increase in the muscle cells' hydration. So it's allowing water to come into your muscle cells. And what this is going to do is actually push across the ions. So it's going to decrease the ionic strength because you have water in the cell now, and that's going to be separating the ions, therefore allowing what needs to happen between myosin and actin and the positive and negative charges to be more forceful. So because there's a decreased meaning less concentrated ionic strength, there's less competition, so what needs to happen does happen. So you have more force, which is power. Also, because of the creatine kinase reaction, you're having a higher ATP concentration. So a higher ATP concentration in tandem with a decreased ionic strength equals a very forceful contraction, and that's where you actually get the mechanism behind power output in creatine. Now, I mean, if everyone just hears that creatine increases power, some people just speculate, oh, it's just because you have more weight from the water. Well, there's actually further mechanisms going on, and I thought it was kind of cool myself when I figured that one out. So what about lean mass gains? Well, if you were just to do a generic body composition test, a DEXA, for instance, if you increase your cellular hydration or your muscle cell hydration, that's going to look like a lean mass improvement. If you were to have a DEXA, chug a gallon of water, and have another DEXA scan, it would show that you increased lean mass because you've increased that water content. Rehydrated different organs as well, that's going to look like a lean mass increase. So that's going to help. The intracellular H2O content is going to look like or it will cause through other mechanisms, I'm just going to tell you about, a lean mass increase. Then your increased work capacity is potentially the speculation behind what is causing that lean mass increase when you actually look at the studies out there. And then supporting other various physiological functions, as I was talking about, if you're saturating your muscles with creatine source, you're also having hearing, vision, all these methylation, all these other downstream effects are going to increase so many other physiologic functions that could help promote lean mass gains as well. So there's numerous forms of creatine out there. However, the most effective and the easiest one to find and the best one to take with the less side effects is going to be just your simple creatine monohydrate. If you wanted to go a step above that, you would look for micronized creatine monohydrate. So creatine monohydrate is going to look very powdery, almost like flour, like white flour. If you were to look at that, micronized is going to look gritty like sand. That is going to be medicinal grade creatine, and it's just going to be easier and more, basically just easier on digestion. For most people, you're going to see less bloating or gastrointestinal symptoms or anything like that. Not that creatine is a huge proponent for causing many of those symptoms. So if we're looking at dosages in particular, this is something you guys would want to know. The standard dosage for creatine would be 3 to 5 grams a day. Doesn't really matter when you take it, and there's not really an inherent need for a loading protocol. Given the pros and cons of it, a lot of people that I've worked with have complained about GI symptoms if they do loading with creatine or bloating and they're just uncomfortable with seeing that increase in weight immediately. You're going to see less of that if you just start with 3 to 5 grams a day and continue to do with that. You don't need to cycle it. Creatine, like I said, is very ubiquitous. Many reactions inside the body. You have upwards or downwards slightly of 120 grams of it a day. So 3 to 5 grams a day is not going to be that much of an insult to what you have normally. So caffeine, another very well-researched and very effective supplement. I'm sure you are all very high friends with caffeine.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a few of you are trying to cut away from it or have never had fun with caffeine, but took a 10-year with our friend caffeine, but I'm sure you all have at least heard of caffeine. So it predominantly comes from coffee beans. Of course, you could say tea, you could say other cocoa, cacao, so on and so forth, but coffee is a very highly concentrated form of caffeine. Interestingly enough, it is the same structure whether it comes from coffee, tea, energy drinks, pills, C4 workout, pre-workout, whatever you're taking, it's the same structure. Caffeine is caffeine. Caffeine anhydrous is what you're going to see in pills or tablets, and they're the easiest form to accurately measure for research. If you're getting powder, for instance, and you were to buy free-form powder, which I think you cannot even do anymore because somebody took a full spoonful of caffeine and they died from it, because a lethal dose of caffeine is 10 grams. If you were to look at 10 grams on like a generic spoon that you would have at your house, it's gonna like fill up a spoon and not even look like that much. So when you're actually doing 250 milligram doses or 400 milligram doses on an actual medical quality scale, which is like a 0.001 level accuracy scale, it like looks like nothing. You can like barely even see it when you're doing the actual dosages. When you look at a pill of caffeine, what you're gonna have in there is silicone dioxide and other fillers, for instance, to make up that whole pill, but the actual caffeine in there is a really small portion of the white powder inside a pill if you were just to pop open a veggie capsule or something like that. So caffeine is a very powerful stimulant that has been very well researched and shown to improve strength, power, and endurance. I'm covering it in strength, but yes, it's applicable to endurance, but I'm not going to cover it again in endurance. Regular caffeine usage is associated, also fun fact for you, with a reduced risk of Alzheimer's, psoriasis, and liver cancer. So what does it do? It antagonizes our adenosine receptors. When adenosine binds to the receptors, it causes sedation and relaxation. We don't want that if we're exercising. So caffeine blocks that receptor from allowing that interaction to happen, so that doesn't allow for sedation or relaxation. So exercise, when you're exercising, you're having ATP broken down into ADP and then AMP, and then eventually, through prolonged exercise, you're gonna have free adenosine everywhere. So that's kind of also why you hear like you're very tired after exercise or so on and so forth, and if you don't have caffeine, it's because you have adenosine floating around ubiquitously in the body, binding to the receptors and causing that sedation and relaxation. Amongst many other things, there's many other factors that would cause the fatigue after exercise, after a very strenuous exercise as well. So the inhibition of adenosine can also influence the dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, and adrenaline systems. What does it ultimately result in? It's an increase in your catecholamine, so your fight or flight hormones, a decrease in fatigue, increased arousal and stimulation. That's everything you want right there when you're exercising. You want none of those, you want that. You don't want these things to not happen. So decreased fatigue, increased fat oxidation, power, anaerobic and aerobic capacity, metabolic rate, O2 uptake, training volume. That's like everything. Caffeine is the go. When it comes to, you have creatine and you have caffeine. Those are probably, if we're gonna have like a pyramid, that's your base and a couple blocks above that when it comes to things. And pretty much where we're gonna start covering next are going to be the little tiny pieces, the sparingly, if you will. When it comes to dosage for caffeine, we have low to moderate, which is probably what most would take. So that's 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram body weight. That equates to, I think it's around 300 to 400 milligrams, that dose right there, if you were to follow that for most individuals. People will acclimate to caffeine. A lot of the same effects are still happening, but the stimulatory effects start going away through habituation with caffeine. But increased lipolysis and so on and so forth, that still is happening. Although the stimulatory benefit, you're not, and the arousal benefit, you sort of start seeing that go away after a while. So an easy way to do that would be simply take 2 or 3 100 milligram pills or like 1.5 tablets. If you were just to go buy like a no-dose or a standard caffeine tablet, that's going to be 200 milligrams more likely than not. And it will easily list that amount for you. So it's very easy to crack those as well. So you can just take 1.5 and you're looking at 300 milligrams right there. Pop that about 30, 60 minutes prior to training, and you are going to be having yourself a nice myriad of fun effects. Ultimately increase performance. Oh yeah, and then I covered it right there. Lethal dose is 10 grams. So it's actually, it would be much harder to overdose by means of a pill or tablet because you would actually take a very large fistful of those to get 10 grams versus the pure powder. If you ever did come across that, it's a very small amount if you were just to look at that. So proteins, this is a good one. This would still be on the base of the pyramid, but I'm not necessarily going to cover it. And gosh darn it, the pictures are gone too. I hope I think the only pictures we've seen, so I know we had Dr. Oz and we had a couple of fun ones in the beginning, but it's okay. All right, I digress, we'll move on. I'm not really gonna cover protein too much. I'm sure you guys have probably covered protein, right? The macronutrients, you've probably covered that ad nauseum so far. In particular, this slide is just going to look at whey protein, casein protein. You guys know that that's a complete protein with all 9 essential amino acids used for protein building. Hemp protein is gaining popularity now. Although there are different compounds that will cause different effects, per se, it's still an incomplete protein. Many people will argue that it's not, but it's actually an incomplete protein. It's not a complete protein like whey or casein. And it's low, in particular, in lysine and leucine. And leucine, I'm sure you guys have covered, is very important for stimulating muscle protein synthesis. So if we have pea, soy, etc., these are also not necessarily going to be the primary proteins that you should be looking at, as well as animal proteins. These are good. Whey protein, casein proteins, the heavy hitters, and these are the most researched as well. So there's, as I mentioned, there's different compounds within these different proteins, especially whey and definitely casein as well, that have individualized effects. But the main benefits you're going to see within the exercise science or lean mass or so on and so forth are going to be from that increase in protein itself. Increasing protein, there's a lot of strange, for lack of a better word, effects that you'll see with people increasing protein and that not proportionately acting like calories, for instance, in the face of either a deficit or even a surplus. Protein is a very unique compound. I'm sure you've also heard the fact that, yeah, protein is technically 4 calories, but due to the thermic effect of it, sort of equates to something, I want to say like 3 calories or maybe even less than that. But ultimately, that increase in protein is going to lead to the ultimate effects that you'll see in the literature. And whey protein, casein protein powders are very easy to increase an individual's total protein content for the day. Something as simple as just 2 scoops, you have 60 grams or more right there, and they can just shake it and bake it. I just wanted to don't bake protein. Well, you can bake protein powder, actually, so never mind. But let's move on. Colostrum. Who's heard of colostrum?
No.
Anyone? Dr. Camp, I'm sure you've heard of colostrum. Okay, so it's a pre-milk fluid that it's like, I guess now it's not necessarily as popularized, but I would say probably 10 years or so, it was gaining a lot of popularity, but wrongfully so. So it's a pre-milk fluid that is secreted by mammals that have just given birth. Breast milk, any sort of birth milk or lactation from a female is going to have the intention to allow that small mammal to grow. It's going to have different growth factors and so on and so forth. So naturally, one would think that the milk from a cow intended for that small calf to grow with all these growth factors, all these beneficial enzymes, if you were to do that and ingest that as a human, would be beneficial. But, as we'll cover right here, so the growth factors in particular, IGF-1, the main growth factor, I'm sure you have all heard of, or if you haven't, it's very much involved in increases in lean mass. That is one that is particularly found in colostrum. So originally, everyone thought if you ingested the same thing that was meant to raise a calf, you would get these benefits as well. But upon further investigation, we found out now that the reason why the calf gains all the benefit from all these enzymes, growth factors, so on and so forth, is because it doesn't really have a fully developed digestive tract and ability to sort of see these things as toxic or negative. So it would basically be all bioavailable for that calf and it would cause benefit. So translate that to a human, if you were giving it to an adult, we already have our immune system developed, we have all these different barriers set in place so that basically it kills all those alive growth factors and everything so that we actually don't get any benefit from that. So our digestive and immune systems are basically developed as an adult, so we don't get the benefits of all these active compounds. So I think I write down here, athletes often, whoopsies. All right, there we go. Athletes often supplement colostrum in an effort to increase fat burning, add lean mass, increase strength. Since their digestive systems are fully developed, these effects don't occur, and the body breaks down the growth factors and enzymes that colostrum provides before they can be transported to the muscle cells. So it sounds good in theory, but it doesn't pan out. So colostrum is not the best. Verdict, there's no supporting literature and most claims have been debunked. Betaine, who's heard of betaine? Anyone?
Butane.
One? Was that even a hand for the, you've heard of betaine, or was that just a
I've
random?
heard of it, yeah.
Okay, like scratching your head or something like that. So betaine is actually kind of misunderstood. So betaine is actually utilized, it's a non-protein amino acid that's utilized in methylation, but betaine is the main compound. But if you just do a generic search of betaine, you'll hear betaine or TMG, but that's trimethylglycine. So tri meaning three, methyl meaning three methyl groups attached to it, and glycine. So it's glycine with three methyl groups attached to it. But trimethylglycine is the particular type of betaine that is obtained from beetroot. So you have betaine being the real molecule, the big molecule. TMG is actually one subset of that molecule, but because it's the most well understood in research, that is what people just call betaine. So if you just buy a betaine supplement or just Amazon Prime search betaine, trying to get the supplement, you'll probably find TMG. But TMG is the one that we're going to cover today, and that is a type of betaine that is obtained from beetroots. So it serves as a methyl donor and supports whole body methylation, reducing homocysteine levels. And you probably heard that homocysteine levels being raised is not necessarily a good thing. So you're going to be reducing inflammation, reducing oxidative stress, which when you exercise, you're causing oxidative stress. So these are going to lead to downstream effects, we're speaking mechanistically. So high homocysteine contributes to arterial damage, blood clots, and blood vessels. You don't want that when you're exercising. So of particular importance to athletes is betaine is a molecule that is shuttled in and out of a cell to affect its hydration status. Speak back to the first concept we covered with creatine and ionic strength. When you're increasing the water content inside the muscle cell, you're decreasing the ionic strength, which is a good thing because there's less competition and now you're having more forceful contractions. So that's where you're going to see the power output mechanism for betaine is it's allowing cellular hydration, decreased ionic strength, less competition, more forceful contractions. When you're also going to see betaine, and I've seen some fat loss literature, that's where it's also being seen as. I don't cover that in here, although it would be applicable to lean mass, but I'm not necessarily sold on it as a fat loss agent. But because it's trimethylglycine and it's three methyl groups, that's going to support methylation. I keep talking about methylation. Has anybody heard of methylation? No? Okay, so you guys have all heard of carbon. Carbon is essential for life. Glucose is 6 carbons, so on and so forth. So you have 2 carbons, that being an acetyl group. 1 carbon is technically a methyl group. So methylation is 1 carbon metabolism. That's pretty much involved with everything in our body. So your dopamine levels, your creatine synthesis, the resynthesis of creatine stores in the body, acetylcholine, pretty much like everything going on ultimately boils down to 1 carbon metabolism to one extent or another. So if you're supporting methylation, you're supporting a lot of physiological and metabolic function in the body. That's going to lead to tons of effects. So because it has all these methyl trimethylglycine has these methyls groups, so that causes it to be a methyl donor, and that's going to lead to toxic effects. So mechanistically, it should increase power output, O2 uptake, endurance, and decrease lactate production in RPE. And it's often touted, as I mentioned, as a fat loss agent, but there's not that much evidence out there, so I'm not particularly sold on it. It's something you could definitely experiment with. It looks to be relatively safe out there, but as far as an evidence standpoint, I wouldn't necessarily give it the stamp of approval as being one of the heavy hitters in the field. So, one thing that is interesting, however, as I mentioned, because it supports methylation, you're also going to see some literature out there for decreasing levels of anxiety, decreasing levels of depression, supporting cognition, and supporting other sleep, for instance. That is because it's supporting methylation by providing those 3 methyl groups. Yep.
You said there's little evidence supporting the claims. Do you mean just the fat loss supplementation claims or all those claims?
All the claims. It's not that evidence heavy. So, I feel that more research must be done. If you were going to experiment with it, this would be the approximate dosages. You could obtain that obviously through eating beets, drinking beetroot juice. We'll cover that in the endurance side of things, and also spinach and leafy greens are very high in betaine content as well. But that would equate to I want to say it's like a pound of spinach, which is quite an abundant amount of spinach. Popeye definitely got his betaine though. And that's why he had the ridiculous oversized bicep and forearm and everything. But I digress. Energy drinks. So on the slide, I want to say, no, I think this is probably the same one that you guys have, but each one of these had a very well thought out picture. So, sorry you guys don't get that. This was a Bang energy right here. But if you could just imagine, insert energy drink here. So most of the ergogenic effect, meaning performance enhancing, ergogenic is performance enhancing effect that you'll see from energy drinks is simply due to the caffeine content. Of course, there are different substances and stimulants within energy drinks, but ironically enough, if you actually look at the dosages and then look at what the evidence points to, none of these I have yet to find an energy drink that actually contains adequate or evidence-based dosages of the stimulants other than the caffeine. Bang will market the creatine and different, CoQ10 and so on and so forth, and these aren't even clinical dosages, they're so menial. And Monster will say, certain ones will say that they have leucine in it, and it's like 5 milligrams of leucine when what the dosage should be would be 3 to 4 grams. Different things like that. They're just so menial amounts that it's not doing much, but what you are getting from it is caffeine and good flavor, and probably good times. But when it comes to performance, yes, you will find even energy drinks different. You can find, I want to say there's Monster, I want to say there's Red Bull, so on and so forth. You can find studies that utilize these and saw ergogenic or performance enhancing effects. But when you really boil down what the mechanism is, it's most likely going to be the caffeine in it. So to delay or to bypass all the other additional ingredients that may or may not make you feel or perform optimally, you could simply just boil it down to caffeine and take a pill of caffeine. BCAAs, I'm sure many people have heard of BCAAs, branched chain amino acids. So the 3 BCAAs are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Have you guys covered BCAAs and the protein?
Not really.
No, not really, but I'm sure. Okay, so fun fact for you, most people will see BCAAs as muscle building, but most people, when they're taking BCAAs, especially with the rise of intermittent fasting or fasted cardio or so on and so forth, most applications that you'll see, people take BCAAs to prevent muscle breakdown when they're in a fasted state. What happens when you take BCAAs in a fasted state is, you do see a transient spike in muscle protein synthesis, meaning the body allocates its resources to build contractile proteins, so myosin and actin. So You do see a transient, a very small increase in MPS because you're gonna have the adequate levels of leucine in particular, which is gonna stimulate MPS. And the body, how it's going to start creating the protein is by pulling from all of the plasma amino acids floating in your body at that time. So yeah, you're gonna start building the protein, but what happens is amino acids are used for many metabolic and physiologic processes that aren't necessarily always going to be towards building muscle. So because it's pulling from all these other processes, yeah, you're getting that short little transient spike in MPS and towards building muscle, but as soon as that spike goes down and the body needs to start doing all the other metabolic processes, guess where it's gonna pull those amino acids from that it needs? Your muscle. So yeah, you're building it up, but just as quickly, gosh darn Jiminy. There we go. All right, I'm just gonna set that guy down. All right, basically, as you build it up, the body says, oh crap, now I need amino acids for this, and this. Goes right back into the muscle where it built them up to support all these other functions. So net effect is you're just spinning your wheels. Now, BCAAs do have certain application and certain effects. Yes, it will prevent muscle protein breakdown, but you could get that same effect by simply just taking even half of a scoop of whey protein, or a full scoop of whey protein would be the better of those two options, because then you'd actually activate MPS, you'd stimulate MPS, and you'd have all the adequate amino acids that your body needs to actually create the contractile proteins. But, yep.
Oh, what's MPS again? Sorry.
Muscle protein synthesis. So that's basically just the body building contractile proteins. So if you trigger muscle protein synthesis, then you're building the protein. Basically everything I said was just in those little dots right there. So leucine, as I covered before, is an activator of mTOR, which then increases MPS. So ultimately it goes leucine, activates mTOR, then you have your MPS response. It's the strongest of the three BCAAs in doing this. That's why leucine is pretty much the most efficacious of the three BCAAs. And basically every benefit that you see from BCAAs in the literature could just be as easily obtained, if not a better benefit, from just taking a scoop of whey protein. So there's also speculation for a desensitization effect to your MPS response if you're constantly influxing BCAAs into the system. If you're constantly activating MPS, you sort of cause a desensitization, which isn't necessarily going to be a good thing. You ultimately do want to see, you want to stimulate MPS, wait about 3 to 5 hours, and then you want to stimulate it again, and so on and so forth. That would be, as far as the evidence side of things, the most optimal approach towards building muscle. Verdict, so there's literature for strength, power, and body composition. It's not necessarily strong enough to warrant taking them. Unless, I mean, even so, if you really like the flavor of them, there's also, it could be used in the endurance side of things as well, because BCAAs and serotonin are going to compete for the same basic pathway, and BCAAs will outcompete serotonin, and you don't want serotonin going up while you're exercising, so it's preventing that from happening. So that's technically delaying fatigue. There's some literature out there, but that's not necessarily that strong either. So, in the face of an adequate protein intake, there's really not much evidence supporting a true investment in BCAAs. HMB. Who's heard of HMB? Beta hydroxy beta methylbutyrate. That one? You guys heard of that? Okay, so it's actually a metabolite of leucine, our man leucine being the main muscle protein synthesis activator. So it's a metabolite that's been shown to be superior at preventing muscle protein breakdown, but less effective as leucine at stimulating muscle protein synthesis. So there's been a 2018 meta-analysis by Martinez et al. Which found only 6 of the various HMB studies to meet the eligibility criteria for this meta-analysis. Most of the studies, you can probably find a decent amount of H&B studies out there, but they either have poor quality altogether in their methods or publication bias or certain things. Anybody heard of Clear HD, the muscle tech? No? Okay. That one markets, it's basically just H&B. It's a supplement that you can buy like Walmart or anywhere. It has a study on it that was drastically flawed that showed like I want to say like a 40-pound increase in lean mass or something in like 6 weeks. It's kind of bananas. But the literature points towards H&B providing anti-catabolic benefit during excessive catabolic states. So yeah, you'll see the anti-catabolic, meaning it will prevent muscle protein breakdown, but it's particularly in fasting, caloric restriction, aging, or immobilization. So if you broke your leg and you're bedridden or something like that, then you're going to see benefits. But in a general healthy population, it's really not that effective for much. So overall, the literature is limited. Leucine is superior, as we mentioned, for stimulating muscle protein synthesis via mTOR, and if possible, a whey or complete protein source will likely yield a greater benefit. If you're trying to prevent muscle protein breakdown, and you're about to go do your cardio or something like that, rather than take H&B, if you slam down a protein shake, that sounded bad. If you just basically have a small protein shake, you're getting fat, you're gonna bring benefits, it's gonna be good times. And it will taste better too, likely. Glutamine. This one's pretty common. Has anybody heard of glutamine? Yeah. Okay. I feel like this one sort of dropped off the popularity bandwagon as well. But it's a conditionally essential amino acid that's found in high amounts in most protein sources, especially whey and casein. You have eggs, you're getting a lot of glutamine. You have chicken, you have steak, you go to Chipotle, you're gonna have a very big amount of glutamine in that meal. It's not necessarily that mysterious. When you look at a supplement, most people think it's something, yes, although it's a supplement and it's easy to take it in amounts that you wouldn't otherwise get from food, there are times where there's overlap where you could actually obtain those amounts of that supplement pretty easily through diet. You just have to know what foods contain the amounts. Well, protein is gonna have glutamine. So it's marketed as a muscle building supplement along with helping to prevent muscle protein breakdown and decrease soreness. It has not been shown in the literature, however, to significantly enhance muscle building or body composition in otherwise healthy individuals. You will find a substantial amount of literature out there for burn victims or for people that have once again been immobilized or people that have specific muscle wasting conditions. Then you'll have glutamine being rather efficacious for these different occasions or instances. But in otherwise healthy individuals, there's really not much benefit in taking glutamine. Just try and get your adequate levels of protein. So wrapping things up, this was just a portion, as I showed you that list in the beginning, of many supplements that are being marketed out there. If you just do a generic search on bodybuilding.com, Amazon, Google strength and lean mass supplements, you will find a metric ton. But what's going to be effective? You got creatine, you got caffeine. Some of these on here were like I would say betaine is something that is starting to get some literature base behind it. We will cover citrulline, beta-alanine, certain ones in endurance, which will be Wednesday. Not even next week. You don't have to wait that long, just a mere 2 days. The evidence base is constantly growing, so there's still hope. Gosh, and there were great pictures here, but I'll just go. Questions? Yes.
So you mentioned that like BCA supplementation doesn't have such a huge effect that it may not be as worth it. Do you feel the same about like glutamine, for example?
Yes, definitely. I mean, in a healthy